Why does your music sounds different everywhere? Have you ever asked yourself why your favorite tracks sound good in your speaker system yet struggles with headphones? Or it might sound great in your small Bluetooth speakers but sounds muffled in your cars. Or even worse, does it sound quite good in your cheap earphones yet sounds worse in your expensive IEMs? Something just doesn't sound right. Well, it might not be your gear since our brains are a big EQ and it takes very few days to adjust to new transducers. And on the other hand, it's not your gear that you bought after researching for so many days. All these people can be wrong, right? The issue is a part of a deeper problem in audio that even seasoned professionals ignore in their listening sessions, which leads them to bad judgment of an equipment's result in a snowball effect that produces so much noise that it keeps us from choosing the right set of equipment for us. Herman researcher, the legendary Floyd Toole, acknowledged this problem. He named it the circle of confusion. Learning about this issue, you will notice pitfalls of current audiophile world. The way you view this hobby is going to be changed forever. For good or for bad, who knows? But in the end, it would be very hard to fool you, and you can very confidently pass on your judgment in forums or any other discussion. Let's start with how music actually gets to your ears. Imagine you went to a live jazz club and atmosphere is filled with smoke. The sax player is just few feet away from you. The bass player is vibrating the wooden floor with bass. The drums are crackling when there is a big hit in the kick. The whole club is vibrating with music. Glasses, chandeliers, tables, everything reflecting sound in their own way. You feel the room singing with the band. That's called sound production. Real instruments without any normalization, without any filters or correction, in real space, creating an atmosphere. Now, what the fuck is sound reproduction? Now, take the same band with all their instruments and put them in a glass box. Place microphones at the sound source and give them very tiny headphones to monitor what they're playing. Then a person listens to the playback on a different room where the room has its own characteristics. Then the person adjusts the factors of the music he or she thinks correctly. Then they do the colorations to each instrument as per their taste. The mix that he rendered or she rendered at the end is getting to your TWS, IEM headphones, which completely ignores the room. So, what you are hearing is not the jazz club. It's a polluted version filtered through equipments upon equipments, rooms upon rooms, another person's ear, taste, and gear signature. And that's the issue. From production to reproductions, music undergoes a lot of translation process, and each of the process adds its color, flavor, and accent to the sound. And that's the requirement of sound reproduction too. The mic might sound great to the audio engineer, the mixing room sound might sound great to the producer, the mastering room sounds great to the mixing engineer. Everyone is based at their own way, but it's not actually the universal truth, right? Before starting the discussion, huge thanks to Audio Engineering Society India and the Audio Store for making this possible. You can read the written version of this article in Audio Store website. I will link both AES India page and the article below. Start with the level 1, Circle of Confusion. Toole's concept is simple yet devastating for audiophiles. Music is mixed on flawed monitors, consumer judge gears based on how it plays in those imperfect mixes. Audio equipment manufacturers design gear to make those mixes sound good. The loop keeps repeating and repeating with no fixed reference or standard about what actually accurate really means. It's like editing a photo using a monitor that is too warm or yellow, then making phone screen too yellow to make the blue pictures, after color correction of course, look neutral. At the end, when you see the picture in a good monitor, it will be washed blue. It always have been like this in audio, and we are constantly just hiding flaws with more flaws. The classic example that I can give you is the Yamaha NS10M. It was very popular among the producers because of their capabilities to show flaws in the music, but inherently the speakers were bright in the mid. Treble and bass cut to both sides, so it resulted in an era of music that is too mid-scooped, low quantity of bass and treble. Not quite sure, but Nirvana use NS10 heavily to produce their music, thus their music suffers from this intelligibility factor in modern systems. So you need a tonality like NS10 to get good performance out of something like Nevermind album by Nirvana. These are the real issues. Now coming to the second level of this problem, studio calibration paradox. Why even professionals and million-dollar studios struggle too? Here's the thing. Suppose you calibrated your speakers to absolute perfection to hear the real truth. It should solve the problem, right? As easy as it gets? Well, that's where the confusion even deepens. Even top tier studios struggle with the same problem despite following every standard in the book. To start things off, professional studios often use very popular standards like LEDE, Live and Dead End, SMPTE, Society of Motion Pictures and Television Engineering protocols like Dolby X-Curve, Dolby Atmos home entertainment guidelines. All these treated, trusted standards backed by expensive cutting edge gears cannot even solve the problem. Most studios that I am talking about are not standardized. Rooms aren't standardized at all. Suppose one studio spends thousands of dollars on treatment, bass traps, calibrated monitors, DSP, but geometry and material and reflections differ. A mix that sounds perfect in one room may tilt in another. And there's also a standardization problem too. Calibration doesn't equal universality. This is where even the problem of calibrated room starts. Well, acoustic geometry is still unique. A mixed room in India with wooden floors, drop ceilings won't sound good like an LA room with concrete walls and angled ceilings. Each studio is different. Calibration corrects the frequency response at a point, but not the whole spatial experience can be replicated everywhere. I wanted to discuss impulse response, complex signal transformation, BRIR, to tell you how reflection is a part of frequency response as it takes both amplitude and time domain via in FFT via Farina method. But I am reserving this for future articles. Frequency response alterations are a big problem too. Reflections are a big problem in studio in general. They create a comb filtering effect which distorts the sound in a way that gets very hard for mixing engineers to not get misled. It causes incorrect EQ decisions during the mixing period due to peaks and dips in frequency response due to constructive and destructive interference of phase alterations. It affects the mastering engineer's perception of spectral balance, which can also lead to unnecessary compensatory adjustments. Calibration targets also vary. Each studio has its own idea of what sounds right. Some want a completely dead room with zero reflections, others want a bit of liveliness. Some aim for perfectly flat response which can be bright, where others prefer gentle downward slope. Every engineer swears their approach is the best, but if they all are best, then who's the right? Even in a perfect room, mixed decisions are made in context of speaker playback, which includes natural crossfeed, room interaction, which you bypass most of the time in personal listening gears. Translation isn't perfection. The goal of mixing is to translate, not to replicate. Even if they do want to achieve some replication, it will be some form of translation. If it sounds good everywhere, it's successful, even if it doesn't sound identical, no matter if it is following NARAS or EA standard. No need to go down to that deep rabbit hole, but it is like that. Music is not made for headphones. Sound production is mostly a speaker-focused environment in which all big decisions from mic placement to ultimate mastering are speaker playback with room acoustics. Engineers earn their ears on speakers, not on headphones. To make creative choices for speakers and to optimize speaker-based consumer playback. IEMs and headphones are quality control measures only, which means they are used for testing how speaker optimized sounds sound like in an isolated situation. Even if some engineer makes something for earphone or speakers, mostly they tune it for low tonal quality grade equipment and not for something hi-fi. The economic and technological reality is cruel. The entire professional music production business is based upon speaker reproduction because that's where the business is and where the basic psychoacoustics functions correctly. Headphones are receiving the artifacts or after effects of the decisions that made entirely on a different acoustic paradigm. Now let's come to the level number 3, that your brain is a large EQ. Music is more than sound. It has emotional attachment that makes us groove. It's not just random noise. So technically we are not functioned to consume it like any other sound. Psychoacoustics is a field that explores the connection of acoustics with human brain, which will be a major focus of this series, but at the end, there's a lot of things that goes into sensing SPL in eardrums to interpreting that in brain. If you heard about HRTF, it's good. I will explain it in later sections. Just remember that HRTF is not only the thing that decides good audio to you. Often we ignore the fact that nostalgia is underrated. Here's what surprises me the most. Our brains are not only just passively receiving sound and translating it to an understandable language, but it is also actively interprets everything based on your history. Just answer this simple question. How much time would you spend if you had the access to your school time Walkman with songs filled with SD card, along with the earbud that costed less than peanuts? Days, right? You might be enjoying something more precious with that backdated hardware that present high-res gears can give you. At least for me, it is the case. Our brains are dumb or smart, we don't know. We just can analyze what it's performing. But when you are actively participating in this hobby as an adult, you need to take care of a few things before you can understand your ears and your brains. If you grew up with very bass heavy headphones or thin sounding gaming headphones or even Beats, your neural pathways, mainly auditory ventral stream and dorsal stream, are adapted to the signature. You had no control over that. However, you can be informed. You are accustomed to high bass, heavy music and games. So when you hear a clean, natural sound, your brain goes, I need bass. This sounds broken. Where is the low end? But fortunately, brains can retrain themselves if you spend enough time with natural sounding systems instead of chasing your history. You will be suddenly hear music that is not masked. You will notice timbre that you never noticed, stereo imaging that you never noticed before it becomes clear. Slowly you will realize boomy bass on poorly designed headphones was actually masking a lot of musical details. Now, here comes the big factor, timbre, timbre, timbre. Here is a really interesting paper which talks about timbre and spatial correlation, which I need to plan for a future because some graph reading is needed for that, which I will talk about in the third article, measurements. As of now, let's understand that our brain is constantly adjusting to its environment. This is covering us. Let's take an example. Suppose your wife partner is calling you from bedroom, bathroom, hall, empty street, among a crowd. Your partner will always sound like the same, no matter how constructive or destructive interference their voice gets due to reflections. No matter how much hollow they sound, they will sound like themselves everywhere. And your brain does the work to separate the voice from the space automatically. Again, for the pathways that I mentioned before. Everything needs time, and it is always possible to get familiar with new signature easily. You just have to be a bit more open-minded and adventurous enough. Then comes the lying of the ears. To add to this whole thing, your brain hears what you see, what you feel in hand. It might sometimes overlap the judgment of your auditory system in ways that you can never truly distinguish between a bad and a good sound. You believe your eyes more than your ears. Well, sometimes. In 1994, Mr. Olive and Toole debunked the myth that listeners ignore visual cues. They can't. 40 listeners participated in identical tests, one blind and one sighted. The results were shocking. The inexpensive speakers dropped significantly in rating when revealed their appearance to the listeners. Despite having the exact same sound they evaluated it earlier, which makes high resolution music not less than something wine industry, where there's a huge correlation between price and label, yet not so in taste between different parts of the world too, like Chinese, Germans and all. Don't get too carried away by the 1994 year. Matter of fact, Thomas Edison in 1901 claimed that there is no color in phonograph, and later he tested with some real people in a concert hall to prove this hypothesis. Although there are a lot of caveats to this data, but it is important to understand that colorations, transparency are not new concepts. People have been working for this advancement for a long time now. So you must understand that if your brain wants to hear the difference in sound for any reason, like you spend your money or it just for the aesthetic, it will definitely hear the same frequency as the different one. Because at core we are human and we all use our sensory inputs to stay relevant in a world where the only constant is change. Then I want to discuss one thing that disturbs me a lot, reviewer worshipping. In a modern world, I'm sensing a far more dangerous bias that shouldn't be there at the first place. I call it the reviewer worshipping. People often take reviewers a bit too seriously that what they refer as good, people also accept is as good. What they refer as neutral, people also accept is as neutral. Now, this has left us with a confusion and ignorance, but nothing else. We fail to understand that most reviewers just are as humans as like us and doesn't have magical ears. They can compare products better than us, yes. Few of them can hear frequency range uh, more than you. It doesn't make a person better judge than anyone who can hear up to 15 kilohertz. Then another thing that disturbs me the most is the neutral pandemic paradox. This all would have easily been ignored if review community never released their so-called neutral target as a comparison to IEMs. People often misunderstand that. To be honest, we hear differently, and moreover than that, how the reviewer made the target is questionable. More often than not, if you put most neutral targets to normalization, you can see a very well-defined deviation from the average human hears. So stop believing that random neutral targets are neutral for your ears too, let alone preference. You are not gullible. Yet at the same time, your brain will do everything in its power to justify what you shouldn't. And your brain is basically an illusion within yourself. Coming to level number 4, let's talk about consumer gear. Suppose you are a mixing engineer and your producers gives you this data. X% of the population listens to 90% of the music while driving. Y% of the population listens to 80% of the music while cooking or gymming. Z% of the population listens to music while they're doing some kind of paperwork. What will you do? How can you cater all these people by using just one track? The answer is simple. Make tracks as neutral as possible. Audio equipment maker will tune the equipments in such a way that cater that audience. There are some intelligent systems that can adapt to the ambient sound and make adjustments to that. Like some luxury cars have this adaptive EQ where they can increase the bass and treble to fight through the noise. But here's the kicker. When some producers make music for the road, for the earphone, as everything is suffering from the circle of confusion, they want to spice up the mix a bit in their own sense of imagination or color. So what they do is, instead of maintaining a good balance, they compress the dynamic range to make sounds louder, pump up the bass and pump up the treble. That sounds exciting. Result? Whenever you listen to those tracks at a good maintained acoustic environment, you will get a lot of harshness. Although the road and muddy bass in earphones helped us to mask a lot of imperfections in the inaccuracies of the mix, especially when indoors. The mixes will sound sandpaper rubbing through your ears. I just discussed the car. Now imagine it with Bluetooth speakers, gyms, kitchens, phone speakers. Some tracks are meant to be played on car won't sound good on hi-fi system. Some tracks that are meant to be played on a phone speakers won't sound good in headphones. Some tracks which are not recorded binaurally will sound not good on headphones. At the end, we should just stop telling us that it's the gear, it's the music itself sometimes. Coming to the level number 5, I should talk about the new age music access. Before starting this topic, let's understand an audio concept called dynamic range. Not to be confused with dynamics, which is very subjective and means different to different people. Dynamic range simply means the difference between the quietest and the loudest signal. Our brains, to be honest, are not so productive that they can sense each and every variance of the signal. So what it does is, it takes an amount of time, then it takes the signal amplitude, averages it, and interprets it as how loud the music is. It's like if there is a series of 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6, our brain can't read 1, 2, 3 and 4, 5, 6 differently. It will read 2 and 5, the average of both the series. And now signal doesn't work this simple, and it's just an example. Layer signals use root mean square to average the signal, like sound. What we need to understand is we can listen peaks and dips in the signal. Not talking about frequency response here again. We understand the average value of a span of time. Now comes the best or the worst part, according to you, dynamic range compression or DRC. You might have heard that modern music is fighting the loudness war. The simple aim is if it's played somewhere, the music should be the loudest. Why? Attention grabbing syndrome, maybe. I can't answer that since I'm not involved in the music industry and I haven't talked to any producer regarding this topic. But it's accepted worldwide that most producers make music louder so the lows and the highs sound better. What they do is pretty simple. They chop up the peaks and they chop up the lows. It makes the average sound a bit higher when boosted in dBFS scale without clipping. I will talk about the dB scales later in the series, but it takes away lot of the things from the music. I'm not talking about lossy or lossless here again. I'll talk about that later. The music sounds lifeless. Each instrument sounds like they are recorded with equal importance. The dynamics, audiophile subjective term here, becomes a lot flatter and dry. The sound feels like it is in head and it is coming from a wall. Dynamic range compression is essentially a loudness cheat code that exploits the fact that your brain measures loudness by averaging energy over time, not by peak levels. Producers use it because in attention economy, the loudest song in the playlist gets noticed first. But there's a cost. Too much compression kills the dynamics of the music and it's not that good. DRC can get applied to every instrument, and on top of that, every tag uses DRC by mastering engineer to supply them before Spotify or any lossy media. But at the end, there is a still hope since the loudness war is decreasing day by day, and we are getting more dynamic music. Mainstream media is still not there to make a change, but independent creators are taking dynamic range compression seriously. This section is called Nothing Else Matters Other Than DRC. Well, there's one example that always makes me laugh. Metallica, we all know, right? Around 2005, they hired a mixing engineer who compressed their songs so highly that people found it difficult to consume. But later in Guitar Hero, a game where you play guitar with the music, added their uncompressed song to the game and people were mad. They asked for re-release and later Metallica might have fixed that. So accept it as soon as possible that most of the current music is made to be played on small speakers, boom boxes and car speakers to sound loud. So switching gears or switching between eras of music is not less than switching between planets. For example, take the Pink Floyd. The dynamics in the Dark Side of the Moon is almost on par with orchestral music, even to this date. Now compare it to something pop. Now let's fix it. There are so many deeper levels to this problem that I can go all day, which affects you as a listener, like crossfit paradox or lack of spatial awareness, modern audio, especially in headphones, audio codecs and their misuse, like MQA. The list goes on, but what can we do to make us safe from all this? First of all, learn what neutral is. I know neutral is boring, you need your music to be fun, but to get your fundamentals and expectations right, first pick well-rewarded headphones to understand what standard is. You might like it, you might not, but the process of you being a neutral listener is going to be very effective, and if you have a strong sense of what is neutral, you can judge other things better. Now, don't run to measurements websites and buy whatever matches your favorite reviewer's neutral. I will talk about this in my third episode if my maths is correct. Until then, listen to different kinds of neutral and make a base for yourself. But 2. Stop chasing expensive gears. Audio gears are complex systems that depict a multivariate equation consisting of trend, economy, and advertisement. In my honest opinion, there is no reason to get anything above $500 in IEMs if you are chasing a really good sound in general. The higher you go, you must choose an IEM that caters to your specific taste, but that's a different thing altogether, as no amount of money can justify your liking for a hi-fi system that is tuned for your taste. I would have spent $2,500 to acquire ZMA 50M Open if I had the money. But to understand sound, you don't have to spend a lot. You don't need uber expensive gears anyhow. One headphone IEM might sound good in some songs, another in the same genre might sound bad. And remember, there is no correlation between price to tonality. I wanted to present a paper every time I say something contradictory, but I forgot which paper it was. And most probably, it is not the headphone itself. It might be the track it might be the source. You are just fixing a flaw with a more flaw, which I don't want. Match gear to your context. You can see a lot of different opinions about newly launched headphones in the market, like XM6. How their tonality is so bad in graphs, but we must remember that companies like Apple and Sony hold so much research power that they can outdone any audio research in the world without a blink of an eye. Bluetooth headphones might be well suited for noisy commute but not for studio. Neutral earphone is suited for indoor use but not for gyms. Eliminating these extremes also leaves us with quite a bit of choices. Who knows? Try and find what works best for you, as you know where to look for from now on. Fourth point, EQ. As simple as it goes, EQ gears, and don't go to squiggling and adjust based on graphs. Learn where you need the correction and fix that only. Give it a little downward slope, a bit of upward tilt. Who knows? It can save you a lot of real money. And don't believe anyone without experiencing it for yourself. You are underestimating a great combination of your HRTF and taste. Number 5, challenge your preferences. Although it is very important to chase your signature, it is also important to understand accuracy. If you don't have a base point, you will be gullible to trick. Do blind test, ask yourself, is this boarding accurate or neutral? No one can listen for you and you must do it for yourself. Your HRTF and preference is unique, and chances are you won't meet another person who shares the exact same combination like you. Coming to the end, what we know and what have we learned. There is no single definition of perfect sound, but there is such a thing called informed listening. When you understand what shapes what you hear, from flawed studios to your own biases, you stop being a passive listener, you become an active interpreter. And in a world full of flawed feedback loops and conflicting references and reviews, that awareness is your greatest tool. The circle of confusion is real. Nobody has an universal reference for correct sound. Studio flaws, monitor colorations, and room acoustics all shape the music you hear. The headphones can reveal or distort mixes depending on how they are tuned. Your best defense: train your ears, learn what neutral sounds like, and EQ with an intention and not with an impulse. The TLDR here is, it's not that deep. There is a song that gives you goosebumps every time. The one that takes you from a perfect moment. Maybe you are driving with your friends at 3 a.m. Maybe you are alone at 3 a.m. when nothing actually makes sense in life. Or you are in college hostel. That emotional connection you feel, it has nothing to do with the perfect frequency response. The circle of confusion that drives engineers crazy now is also the reason why your dad cries in your old car when the music just hits right. Why your cheap earbuds from college can still give you chills. Why that terrible Bluetooth speaker at the bench party sounded like the most fun instrument ever. Because here is the thing that nobody ever tells you. Music isn't about achieving the perfect playback. It never was. It was about the moment when the sound becomes memory, when frequencies connect to your feelings. Think about it. Beatles recorded on 4-track machines that would make today's bedroom producers even laugh. Bob Marley's vocals were captured on mics that we call vintage. Our parents fell in love with those songs in FM radio, literally mono, band limited, compressed to hell, and yet those songs moved the world. Here's what I realized after years of chasing perfect sound. Every piece of gear you own, from your car's booming system to your analytical headphones, is just a different window to the same song. Some windows are clear, some are tinted, some are stained, but they are all showing you the something real, something same. The tragedy isn't that we don't have perfect playback. The tragedy is when we stop hearing the music because we are too busy listening to the equipment. I have seen audiophiles with $1,000 system who haven't enjoyed albums in years. They are not listening to music, they are just listening to their tweeters, their subwoofers. Meanwhile, someone with a $50 Bluetooth speaker having a religious experience because they are hearing the song, not the equipment. Yes, learn about audio, train your ears, understand the science, but never let the pursuit of the perfect sound kill your ability to just fucking listen. That's my time. Hope you like this video. Bye.